So I want you to picture this scenario. I think every single one of us has been in it. You've been asked to lead a group. Could be a big project at work, could be a volunteer thing, maybe a small group at church. You walk in, or let's be honest, you log on to Zoom.
Right.
And there's this little script that just starts running in the back of your head.
I am the leader script.
Exactly. It's saying, okay, I'm in charge. I need to have the answers. If it gets quiet, I have to fill the silence. Basically, I need to teach these people something.
That is the default mode for almost everyone, I think. We just equate leading with talking. We think if we're not, transmitting information, we're failing at the job.
Right. But today, we are diving into a document that it takes that entire assumption, crumples it up, and throws it right in the trash.
It really does.
The source is the Christian Care Mentor Facilitator Guide. And I have to tell you, right off the bat, it hits you with this rule, a specific number.
Yep.
That is honestly a little bit terrifying.
I think I know exactly which number you're talking about.
The 10% rule. This guide says that if you are leading a 1-hour session and you, the leader, speak for more than 6 minutes total, you might actually be doing it wrong.
It sounds impossible, doesn't it? 6 minutes in an entire hour.
It sounds like I'm not doing my job. If I'm only talking for 6 minutes, what am I even there for?
And that's exactly what we need to unpack today. Because this guide, it's written for church volunteers.
Right.
But it's really a masterclass in the psychology of human connection. It's not a manual on how to teach. It's a manual on how to stop teaching so that real connection can happen.
And that is the mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack what this text calls the ministry of presence. We want to figure out how a leader can stop trying to fix people and just start, seeing them. Because honestly, whether you're running a board meeting or just trying to be a better friend, the principles in here are fascinating.
They really are.
Yeah.
And it all starts with this fundamental shift in posture. The guide makes a huge distinction between being a teacher and being a facilitator.
And that's not just semantics.
No, it's not just wordplay. It changes the entire reason you're in the room.
Okay, let's dig into that. Because usually when I'm facilitating, I still feel responsible for the output. I need to make sure we hit the goal or whatever. But this guide seems to be saying that's not it.
Right. If you go in as a teacher, your success is all about efficiency, right? Did we cover all the slides? Did we hit the KPIs? But this text argues that this kind of facilitation is a calling of the heart. It's not a technical role.
So what's the new metric then? If I can't just check a box that says finish the chapter, how do I know if I did a good job?
It's measured by how the people in the room feel.
Yeah.
The guide is super specific. It asks, do they feel seen? Do they feel valued? And do they feel supported?
Wow, that's a much harder metric to track than a checklist.
It is, because it forces you to read the room, not just the page. And it says your role is not to manage the outcomes. You aren't there to, force feed a learning objective into someone's brain.
Okay.
You're there to, and I'm quoting here, cultivate love, trust, and attentiveness so learning can take root.
I have to say, there is a massive sense of relief in that. Just hearing that, I think a lot of us feel this crushing pressure to be the expert.
Oh, absolutely.
To have the aha moment ready to hand out. But this is saying, no, take that pressure off. You don't have to manufacture the breakthrough.
Exactly. The text frames it in a spiritual context, calling it a ministry of presence. It says the wisdom emerges from the shared experience, from the group itself. So you, as the facilitator, you're just setting the table. You're not cooking the meal.
But that brings us to the mechanics of it. Because setting the table sounds nice, but what does it look like? How do you actually run a meeting where you aren't teaching? The guide mentions a flipped classroom.
Yes, and it's the key to making this work. In a traditional model, you come to the meeting to get the information.
The lecture.
You sit, you listen. In this flipped model, though, the participants do all the reading and the listening before they even show up.
So the content dump happens on their own time.
Right, which means the group session is purely for application, for reflection, for discernment. It says the group exists to apply the content, not to lecture on it.
Which brings us right back to that terrifying 10% rule. 6 minutes. So if I'm not lecturing, what am I even doing for the other 54 minutes?
You are listening, but not just, passively waiting for your turn to talk. The guide calls it listening beyond words. You're listening to the emotion, the tone, the body language.
And what's not being said.
Crucially, what's not being said.
That actually sounds way more exhausting than just reading from a slide deck.
It is. It's so much harder than lecturing. When you lecture, you're in control. You're driving. When you listen this deeply, you are surrendering that control. And the guide says this is why you limit your speaking. Because if you're talking, you are probably explaining or correcting or fixing.
Then we want to avoid fixing people.
We absolutely do. The guide is very clear. Resist the urge to correct, to fix, or to advise.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here. If I'm leading this group of mentors in training and they say something that's just wrong, shouldn't I correct them? Shouldn't I step in?
That is the gut instinct, isn't it? To fix the error. But the guide argues that in this context where you're building emotional intelligence, a lecture just doesn't work. If someone is struggling, you don't give them the answer.
So what do?
You ask an open-ended question. What stood out for you in that section? Or how does that land with your own experience? You invite them to discover the answer.
It's like the Socratic method, but with more empathy.
Exactly. And there's this great little tip in there about accountability for the 6-minute rule.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. It says you can actually ask the group to help you.
Yes. You can say, hey, everyone, my goal today is to listen more than I talk, so if I'm going on too long, please feel free to, give me a sign.
Think about the signal that sends to the room.
It completely dismantles the hierarchy. It says, I am not the sage on the stage. I'm learning right here with you. The text says this creates a culture of shared learning, not top-down instruction.
It shows that their voice matters just as much, if not more, than the leaders. But this raises a question about safety. If I'm stepping back this much, how do I keep the conversation from going off the rails?
Well, that becomes your primary job. If you aren't teaching, you are shepherding. The guide spends a lot of time on creating a safe shepherding environment.
What does that look like in practice?
It starts before anyone even says anything. You have to establish clear ground rules. Respect. Confidentiality. This isn't just a formality, it's the foundation. The text reminds you that this ministry deals with tender stories.
Right? People are probably sharing about their own struggles, their own burnout.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they won't share those stories if they think they'll be judged or gossiped about. So the facilitator is the guardian of that safety.
And part of that is managing the different personalities, right?
Yeah.
We've all been in that meeting with the one person who just dominates the whole thing. If I only have 6 minutes, how do I gently redirect them?
You don't shut them down. You gently shepherd the space.
Yeah.
So that might be nonverbal, breaking eye contact with the person who's talking and looking at others. Or it might mean using one of your precious minutes to say, that's a great point. I'd love to hear from someone who hasn't had a chance to share yet.
It's like being a very subtle traffic cop.
A very gentle traffic cop, yes. And on the flip side, you have to protect the quiet ones. You invite them in without putting them on the spot, just making eye contact or creating a pause that's long enough for them to feel they can jump in.
That silence can be so heavy, though, especially on a video call. I always panic and think my internet froze.
It feels heavy, but the guide says you have to get comfortable with it. That pause is where the introverts are processing. If you fill it too quickly, you lose them completely.
Okay, what about conflict? The guide says disagreements will happen, and they could get heated.
And the guide says don't panic. The phrase it uses is calm curiosity. When tension rises, you don't get defensive or try to smooth it over. You respond with grace. Tell me more about why you feel that way.
Calm curiosity. I like that. It reframes conflict as a learning opportunity, not a problem to be solved.
It models the very behavior you want the trainees to learn. If you, the leader, panic during a conflict, you're teaching them that conflict is dangerous. If you stay calm, you teach them it's manageable.
You are modeling the message. So earlier we said success isn't about efficiency, but the guide does give a sort of health check for the group, the relational health check.
Yes, this is a great checklist for any leader, really. The ministry is healthy only if participants can say 3 things. Number 1, I feel supported.
Okay.
Number 2, I feel appreciated.
And what's the third one?
I am not expected to serve alone.
I am not expected to serve alone. Wow, that is powerful, especially for caregiving, which can be so incredibly isolating.
It is. And that principle of not being alone applies to the facilitator, too. This was a section I found really, really responsible. It doesn't just throw you into the deep end.
Right, let's talk about that support structure, because if you're listening to these tender stories for an hour, that's going to weigh on you.
Section 1.2 is very strict on this. It says facilitators are never meant to serve alone. There's a whole hierarchy of support. You have a program leader, someone you report to.
So you have a boss.
You have a boss, you have a mentor, you have backup. And you need a substitute, someone who can step in if you're sick or just overwhelmed. This prevents the savior complex.
The group can't meet without me feeling.
Exactly. If the ship sinks because you have the flu, you haven't built a very good ship.
Sure.
And then there's the third layer of support, the prayer partners.
And this is where the spiritual part gets really practical.
It is. The text calls prayer essential protection. Protection against discouragement, fatigue, and what it calls spiritual warfare.
Even if you're not religious, the psychological idea there is really sound. You need people who are actively looking out for your well-being, who acknowledge that the work is heavy.
Absolutely. It admits this work drains you, and you need replenishment. You need to know you're not the only line of defense.
Speaking of defense, the guide sets some really hard boundaries. We talked about not fixing people emotionally, but there's an even harder line on professional advice.
This is critical. For liability? Sure, but mainly for the safety of the people being cared for. Facilitators are not counselors. They are not therapists.
Know your lane.
Know your lane. You do not give medical advice, legal advice, anything like that. You are a companion, not a clinician.
There's a line in the text about escalation that I've found really powerful. Usually if you have to escalate something, like if someone reveals they're in danger, it feels like a failure on your part.
Right, like I couldn't handle it. The guide reframes that so beautifully. It says, escalation is not failure. It is responsible, loving care.
Say that again. I think a lot of leaders need to hear that.
Escalation is not failure. If you report a safety concern, you aren't admitting defeat. You are performing an act of love. You are getting them help that is beyond what you can offer.
That's such a healthy perspective. It takes the ego right out of it. You're not the savior.
You are the channel, not the source.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts for a second. The stewardship of time. What does the session actually look like? The guide gives a template.
It does. The life cycle of a session, it's a very tight 60-minute container, which is what allows people to feel safe.
Walk us through it.
Okay, it starts with a 5-minute opening, welcome, and prayer. Simple. Then you move right into the main event, 35 minutes of reflection and sharing.
And that's based on their pre-work.
Exactly. What did you hear? What was hard for you? Then there's a shift, a 10-minute block for integration.
What does that mean? Integration.
It's practice. It suggests role-playing or talking through a case study. It's about taking those abstract feelings and grounding them in what they're actually going to do.
And then?
A 10-minute closing, final thoughts, prayer, done.
It's surprisingly structured for something that's supposed to be so organic.
Well, the structure creates the safety. And the guide is a stickler for punctuality. Starting and ending on time isn't just about efficiency. It's about honoring boundaries. If you run late, you're disrespecting people's time.
It also mentions keeping the text simple.
Yes. Simplicity allows energy to remain focused on people. That's the quote. Use Zoom. Use a consistent link. Don't make people hunt for the password every week.
We can all learn from that. How many meetings start late because of tech friction? It just kills the energy before you even begin.
It creates anxiety, and your job is to reduce it.
So as we wrap this up, I want to look at the Facilitator Covenant. It's near the end of the guide, and it feels like a manifesto for this whole style of leadership.
It really is. It's a commitment to serve with humility. But my favorite part is the commitment to steward their own soul.
Stewarding their own soul. You don't see that phrase in a corporate leadership manual. What does it mean?
It means you have to prioritize your own rest and renewal. The guide is blunt about it. You cannot pour from an empty cup. If you're not taking care of yourself, you can't care for the group. It's about modeling the very health you're trying to teach.
It seems to summarize the whole philosophy, really. You prepare, you show up, you listen, but you have to release the outcome.
That is the core takeaway. The guide says, my leadership flows from posture and presence, not control.
It shifts the entire focus from, did I perform well, to was I faithful?
It's a huge distinction. Performance is about you, how you looked, how smart you sounded. Faithfulness is about them. Did you show up for them? Did you love them? Did you listen?
And that is the thought I want to leave our listeners with today. The guide explicitly states, faithfulness, not performance, is the goal.
It completely changes the definition of a good job, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It frees you from that burden of having to be perfect.
It really does. So for you listening, whether you're leading a team at work, a ministry, or just having a hard conversation with a friend, ask yourself this. How would my behavior change if I stopped trying to perform?
To be the fixer.
To be the expert with all the answers,
Right.
and instead just focused on being faithful to the person right there in front of me.
It might just change everything.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive into the ministry of presence. We'll catch you next time.